The chapel was washed in a cold, sterile white. So white it felt like even the ceiling lights got swallowed whole, leaving only a solemn glare sharp as a blade. The pews were packed, no one dared speak loudly, but the whispers were thick as fog, slipping through every crack and clinging to my skin. I knew exactly what they were talking about. The girl who was raised by mistake. The peacock knocked off its pedestal. The imposter who lived 20 years in a rich family's house. And today, that pathetic, hated girl would be married off like a debt being paid. My name is Grace Harrington. For 20 years I was the perfect Harrington daughter in the papers, in family photos, at parties where your smile had to be measured with a ruler. Until 2 weeks ago, when their biological daughter was found. Her name was Lila. In one night, my whole world caved in like a rotten roof. I went from daughter to mistake, from pride to stain. And today, they said this was the only way for me to repay them for raising me. I was going to marry Alexander Ashford. The Ashford heir. Old money East Coast power wealth that came with rules nobody wrote down. He was infamous for a car accident that supposedly left him paralyzed, and even more infamous for a temper like gunpowder. They said he was impossible. They said he didn't need love, only a legal marriage to grease the wheels of his deals. They said I should be grateful I still had value. The bouquet in my hands felt like a block of ice. I gripped it so hard my knuckles went white, crushing the petals. The red carpet stretched ahead of me, and at the end of it sat him still as a statue in a black wheelchair. Alexander wore a perfectly tailored black suit. His face was so handsome it almost made you angry, because there was nothing warm about it. Dark eyes, cold and deep, fixed on me like I was an item that had finally arrived at the right address. I walked forward step by step, hearing my heels strike the wood in a hollow echo like a countdown. The priest stood under the vaulted ceiling, his voice solemn. Grace Harrington, do you take this man to be your husband? In good times and in bad, in sickness and in health. I was ready. I'd prepared 2 words to throw in the Harringtons' faces in front of the entire East Coast elite. 2 words to humiliate them, to remind them I wasn't property. 2 words to claw back the last scrap of dignity I had left. I opened my mouth, and right then, a strange man's voice suddenly rang inside my head, so clear I thought someone was whispering right into my ear. Pretending to be disabled is exhausting, but at least my new wife looks kind of gentle. I froze. My throat locked like someone had grabbed it. There were no speakers, no microphone. No one had said a word. Alexander sat there, expression unchanged, eyes like ice. But that voice kept cutting straight through my skull, vibrating in my bones. Should I kiss her? Would that be rude? Damn it, why hasn't she said anything? Is she actually going to refuse? Have I been acting all this time for nothing? My heart slammed so hard my chest hurt. I hadn't imagined it. I was hearing his thoughts. Outside, Alexander's eyes were steel cold. Inside his head he was a mess like a kid lost in a supermarket. It was ridiculous. And terrifying. So, only I know this secret. A sharp thought slid across my mind. He isn't paralyzed. The priest cleared his throat, repeating the question, more urgent this time. Grace Harrington? Hundreds of eyes from both sides of the aisle stabbed into me like needles. In the front row, my adoptive parents' faces were tight and dangerous, Eleanor Harrington pale with anger and fear. Richard Harrington's hand clenched so hard the veins stood out. Like if I said the wrong word, they'd kill me right here with silence. In the far corner, Lila in a bridesmaid dress watched me, the tiniest poisonous smile curling at her lips. She looked like someone who'd won the game and was waiting for me to get on my knees. I looked back at Alexander. He still wore that distant, untouchable mask, like everything was under control. But inside his head, the voice was nearly panicked. Say yes. Please. Say it, baby. Please. Don't ruin this. A laugh almost escaped my throat. How strange. For 2 weeks they'd stripped everything from me, turned me into a joke, backed me into a corner, and right as I was about to burn the whole thing down, fate dropped a bizarre weapon into my hands, the truth hidden inside this man's mind. I reached for the microphone from the officiant. My voice came out clear, steady, so steady I surprised myself. I do. The entire chapel went silent. So silent I could hear someone inhale, hear fabric rustle, even hear the tiny tremble of petals in my shaking bouquet. My adoptive parents' faces went rigid. Fear flipped instantly into shock. like they couldn't understand why a pawn would willingly step onto the board. Lila's smile cracked, like a photo cut mid-frame. But the strongest reaction was Alexander's. His eyes stayed dark, cold. Only the tiniest fracture flickered across his expression so fast you'd miss it if you weren't watching. But inside his head, she said yes. She actually said yes. One beat, then another, his heart pounding like war drums. Why? That's not how this goes. The Harrington said she'd rather die than bow her head. Or, am I just that attractive? No, don't get cocky. But, she really said yes. I had to bite the inside of my cheek to keep from laughing. The priest looked like he'd been spared a disaster and rushed through the rest of the ceremony. When Alexander's assistant brought out the ring, I held out my hand first. The band slid onto my ring finger ice cold, heavy as a vow with a price tag. Alexander's fingertips brushed my skin as he placed it on. Light, proper, perfectly controlled. But inside his head, it was chaos. Her hand. It's soft. It's really soft. I touched her. Oh my God. Then came the kiss. The air tightened. I heard whispers, muffled giggles swallowed too quickly. Everyone wanted the ending to this weird wedding, something to pity, something to mock, something to tell over cocktails later. Alexander rolled his electric wheelchair closer. The distance between us disappeared. He tilted his head up. Dark eyes locked on mine at close range, so intense it looked like a warning. But I heard the truth. If I make her bend down, do I look useless? But if I stand up, damn it, the plan is blown. What do I do? What do I do? I should have practiced. I stared at that cold face, that fake calm, and for 1 second I thought, life really knows how to mess with people. I leaned down. On purpose. I moved close enough that our warm breath touched. In his eyes I caught a small reflection of myself, eyes still red from a week of being forced into dresses, forced into smiling, forced into pretending I was happy. She's coming closer. She smells. Where do I kiss her? Lips? Too fast? Cheek? But would that disappoint her? While he was still spiraling, I turned my face and brushed a kiss against the corner of his mouth, quick as a dragonfly touching water. Just a light touch, but enough to make the whole chapel hold its breath. His lips were cool, soft, and he pulled back fast, like even he startled himself. But in his head, fireworks exploded. I kissed her. I actually kissed her. Her skin. So smooth. I'm dead. After the ceremony, I was escorted outside through stiff congratulations and camera flashes that cracked like lightning. A long Rolls-Royce waited, black as a beast asleep under the streetlights. I got in. The door shut, slicing the world outside cleanly in half. Inside the car, it was just the two of us. Alexander leaned back, eyes closed, not saying a word, cold as if I didn't exist. If you only watched his face, you'd think he hated me. But inside his head, what is she thinking? Does she regret it? Did I scare her? What should I say? The weather? No, that's stupid. Her family? Don't she'd hate that? I'm choking. Jesus. I turned to the window, forcing my expression calm. I closed my eyes too, copying him. If I didn't, I was afraid I'd laugh out loud. She closed her eyes too. Is she shy? My fault. I'm sitting here like a stone. I have to do something. The car pulled away, leaving the chapel behind. The Ashford estate sat far from the city, tucked into quiet hills. As we passed through the gate, I saw winter-bare trees, low golden lamps lining the drive, and then a huge stone mansion, quiet luxury, but cold enough to steal your breath. It didn't feel like a home. It felt like a fortress. My bedroom was on the second floor. And what made my eye twitch was this. The room was decorated almost exactly like my old room at the Harrington house. The paint color, the curtains, even the reading chair by the window, a staged favor. A reminder that I'd been transferred from one house to another like a package, while the Harringtons still wanted credit stamped on the label. The housekeeper led me to the door and bowed politely. Ma'am, Mr. Ashford is handling work in his study. Please rest for now. I nodded and pushed the door open myself. The room was empty. Quiet. I almost exhaled in relief. I peeled off the heavy wedding dress, pulled out the pins in my hair, and stepped into the bath, sinking into warm water. Only then did the noise in my head ease, like a storm pulling back. Hearing Alexander's thoughts had come out of nowhere. But strangely, it came at the exact right time. It handed me a new option in the middle of desperation. I didn't just have to survive. I could flip the whole board. A man pretending to be disabled. Why? I was still turning that over when there was a soft knock at the bathroom door. "Ma'am, it's me. Edith." I wrapped myself in a robe and opened the door. A middle-aged woman stood there, kind-faced, holding a glass of warm milk. "Mr. Ashford was worried you might be hungry. He asked me to bring this up." I took it, smiling. "Thank you." Edith didn't leave right away. She looked at me, hesitant, like she wanted to say something but feared it would be a sin. "Ma'am, Mr. Ashford is only a bit cold, but he isn't a bad man. Please, please don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of him." If she knew how panicked Mr. Ashford was inside his own head, she'd probably laugh. I nodded gently. "I know." Edith blinked, surprised, like she didn't expect that answer. Then she bowed and left. I finished the milk, set the glass down, and lay back on the bed. Exhaustion pressed over me like lead. I fell asleep fast. Until midnight. A small sound snapped me awake, maybe a door, maybe the floorboards. I didn't know. I only knew my spine went cold when moonlight spilled through the window and drew a tall shadow beside the bed. Alexander. But not Alexander in the wheelchair. He was standing. Long legs, straight and steady like someone who'd never been hurt. He watched me in silence, eyes deep and unreadable, like he was weighing something dangerous. And in that moment, I understood. Today's wedding was only the doorway. Whatever was truly waiting for me had just begun. I shut my eyes and kept my body still like a corpse. I even held my breath, forcing my heart to slow down like a small animal playing dead under a predator's claws. In the cold moonlight, I heard the faint rustle of fabric, then the quiet stop of wheels close by. The darkness was thick like the whole room was holding its breath, waiting for what came next. "So well behaved." His voice in my head softened suddenly, like a little kitten. I almost flinched, because during the day, Alexander Ashford was ice cold, rigid, ruthless enough to seem heartless, but inside his head right now, he was warm water slipping through cracks in stone. I felt him lean down slowly. Warm breath brushed my forehead. So close I caught the clean scent of soap and the cold wood smell clinging to his suit. My heart started pounding like it wanted to expose me on the spot. What was he going to do? Just once. The thought rang out reckless and trembling. She won't notice. And then a kiss light landed on my forehead. So light that if I weren't wound tight as a wire, I might have thought I dreamed it. But I felt it clearly. Careful, gentle, like someone touching rare porcelain. Afraid it might crack. Oh God. In his head, a breath broke loose. I just kissed my wife. My wife. I still didn't dare open my eyes. I only heard him pull away quietly, like a thief who'd stolen the one thing he wanted most and was terrified of making a sound. The next morning, I woke up and Alexander was gone. The room was spotless, like no man had stood there in the night, like no stolen kiss had ever touched my forehead. On the nightstand sat a brand new set of clothes, still folded with store-perfect creases. Beside it was a black card, no logo, no note, just sleek, cold plastic, expensive in the way power is expensive. I stared at it for a few seconds, then let out a dry little laugh. I'd barely finished changing when my phone buzzed. Maggie Harrington. The woman I'd called mom for 20 years until in 2 weeks, she'd yanked that bond off my neck like it was a dirty rag. The second I answered, her voice was sharp as a razor. "Grace." She said my name, like she was grinding down something bitter. "You're real proud of yourself. Real bold pulling that stunt at yesterday's wedding. Who gave you permission to say yes?" I held the phone slightly away, my voice calm enough to surprise even me. "Didn't you force me to get married?" I said. "Well, I said yes. Isn't that what you wanted?" "What I wanted?" Maggie laughed, the sound like breaking glass. "You don't get to want anything. You're the imposter who stole Lila's life. You should know your place and do what you're told." Oh, so they were scared. Scared that once I sat in the Ashford seat, I'd be above them. Scared their mistake had suddenly gained a strong enough backing that they couldn't press me down anymore. "And now you're Alexander's wife," Maggie went on, her voice getting faster like she was afraid of losing control. "So what about Lila? Do you realize you're taking her place?" I leaned back in the chair, looking at the pale sunlight beyond the window, and almost smiled at how ridiculous it was. If Lila wants to marry him, I said slowly. Then tell her to go say that to Alexander herself. On the other end of the line, silence dropped hard for a few seconds. Then Maggie's voice went hard. Don't test her, Grace. She launched into that same tired speech about gratitude, about resources, about raising you. Like raising me had been an investment and now the bill was due. For 20 years you ate in this house, lived off this house, Maggie said. Now this family needs you to do one thing and you're making excuses. Listen, you tell Alexander to invest $100 million into Harrington Group. Immediately. If you don't, then what? I cut in light as air. She stiffened. I already knew what she was about to use. That threat was so old I could recite it in my sleep. If you don't, you'll tell Alexander I'm not your biological daughter. I finished for her, my voice almost smiling. You really think he cares? The line went dead quiet, like someone had squeezed her throat shut. I leaned forward and spoke slowly, clearly, word by word. You're wrong, Maggie. I'm Alexander Ashford's wife now. Mrs. Ashford. Whatever the Harringtons do from here on out has nothing to do with me anymore. I hung up. The click was dry and final, like slicing through a rotting cord. I'd barely set my phone down when the bedroom door swung open. Alexander appeared in his wheelchair, pushed in by an assistant. His face was as cold as ever, his eyes dark, like the room owed him an explanation. Up, he said, bluntly. I murmured. He motioned for the assistant to set breakfast on the table, then waved everyone out. The door closed, sealing off the outside world. It was just the two of us. The air tightened like a drawn wire. Inside his head, though, it was completely different. Who was she just talking to? His thoughts hammered. Her family? An argument? Are they bullying her again? Idiots. Do they seriously think they can order around Sebastian Ashford's wife? He was cursing viciously in his mind, but when he spoke out loud, his tone was so detached it was almost insulting. There's a card on the table. He tapped the tabletop lightly. No password. Spend whatever you want. I looked at him, then asked him straight out. If your family shows up and tells you to divorce me so you can marry Lila, I said evenly, would you do it? Alexander paused. He lifted his gaze to me. His look was sharp as a knife pulled clean from a sheath, cold and dangerous enough that most people would drop their eyes and apologize on instinct. But I heard what was really blaring in his head. What does she mean? He panicked. Is she testing me? Or does she want a divorce? No. I finally got her to marry me. I can't let her leave. Alarm bells screamed in his mind, while on the outside, he gave a mocking little laugh. Grace, he said, voice dripping with sarcasm. You think pretty highly of yourself. You really think my gate is something you can walk in and out of whenever you feel like it? He tilted his head, eyes like he wanted to crush me. You'd better learn to behave. Stop getting ideas. Or else. His voice dropped, like a threat. I'll show you what real suffering is. If you only listened to the words, you'd be scared. But inside his head, it was the exact opposite. That's right. He coached himself like someone practicing in front of a mirror. Threaten her. Scare her so she won't dare leave me. God, I'm a genius. I lowered my head and pretended to tremble. Pretended I was so frightened I couldn't speak. Then I whispered, sweet as a dutiful new wife. I understand. Immediately his thoughts swerved like a car slamming on the brakes. She's really scared. He sighed inside his head. Did I go too far? Did I scare my wife too much? Damn it. I have to make it up to her later. I need to buy her something. He started rifling through his memory with total seriousness. What does she like again? Right. The file the Harringtons gave me. Bags? Limited edition jewelry. That's it. I bit my lip so I wouldn't laugh, then ate breakfast quietly. Like I truly believed he was terrifying. The food was insanely good. The Ashford chef wasn't playing around. When I finished and stood up, my phone buzzed again. Lila. She really was patient, waiting until now like she wanted to pick the exact moment I'd settled in to come scratch at the surface again. Her voice through the phone was gentle, caring, soft as cotton. Sister Grace, she said in that fake intimate tone. Are you okay? Are you getting used to living there? Is your husband treating you well? I sank back into the couch and answered lazily. Great. He's very good to me. There was a half beat of silence. Then I heard a thought slip out like a thorn poking through velvet. Treating her well? Lila snickered inside her head. That cripple knows how to treat anyone? Grace always has to show off. I froze. It wasn't just Alexander. I could hear Lila too. As long as I was close enough. Or connected enough. The discovery made my chest feel light, like I just found the key to a locked room. Lila recovered quickly, smoothing her voice back into place and starting her act. Grace. Don't misunderstand me. She sighed, sad and generous like a saint. I'm just worried about you. I know you're suffering, marrying into that family. You must be miserable. She paused, then slid in the little reminder. And Mom? Maggie. She speaks harshly, but she has a soft heart. Don't blame her. I stared at the ceiling and thought, soft-hearted enough to cut people clean with a knife. This afternoon I'm going shopping with my friends, Lila continued, voice like honey. Come with us. Okay? Get some air. It's been so long since we've seen each other. I rolled my eyes. A shopping trip with her rich friends. I figured I'd be handed a few pity lines and a few sugar-coated knives, but I also figured I'd get what I needed. Sure, I said. After I hung up, I looked up and saw Alexander standing in the doorway to his study, staring at me, his face dark. Inside his head, the sirens were back. What does Lila want? He ground his teeth in his thoughts. Every time those two women are together, something happens. Not a chance. I need to keep an eye on this. I pretended not to notice. Calmly, I went upstairs to change. I chose a simple black dress. Fitted, clean, no frills, light makeup, hair tied back. I took the black card from my nightstand, flipped it between my fingers, and walked out. The driver brought me to the mall. Lila and her two society friends were waiting at an upscale cafe where one latte cost what a normal person ate in a week. When I walked in, they jumped up to greet me, warm and enthusiastic like we were best friends. Grace, you finally made it. Wow, you look amazing today. Looks like life at the Ashford house has been pretty good to you. Lila linked her arm through mine and guided me to the table, sweet as could be. But her eyes kept flicking from my wrist to my handbag, then stopping on the black card in my hand. In her head, jealousy flashed bright. That's a global black card, Lila thought. Bitter. Alexander's that generous with her? After a few minutes of small talk, Lila finally steered the conversation to what she really wanted. Grace, she said, biting her lip, eyes turning just red enough. Honestly, I invited you today to apologize. Everything is my fault. If I hadn't come back, you wouldn't have had to go through this. Her friends jumped right in. Lila, you're too kind. How could this possibly be your fault? If anyone's to blame, it's the person who held onto a place that wasn't hers for 20 years. Giving it back to the real owner is only fair. Exactly. One of them smirked. Marrying Alexander is already out of her league. If he wasn't disabled, would she even have a shot? Every word was poured into my cup on purpose, hoping I'd swallow it and choke. I took a sip of coffee and stayed quiet. When Lila realized I wasn't biting, she switched tactics immediately. She pulled a check from her bag and slid it toward me, with a small brooch placed on top like a kind gift. Grace, Lila said, voice trembling like she was the victim. This is $500,000. I know you've been treated unfairly. Take it. Buy something you like. And this brooch is a birthday present. I looked at the check. Then I smiled. Birthday, I repeated. Slowly. I lifted my eyes to meet Lila's. My smile stayed in place, but my voice turned cold. Did you ask my permission? Did you ask my permission to use my birthday as your badge for 20 years? Lila's face went paper white. The whole cafe went silent, like someone hit mute. Her two friends glanced at each other, clearly not expecting me to strike that directly. In one friend's head, anger and contempt flashed. What is she even talking about? She thought. It's just a birthday. Who does she think she is? She thinks she's special just because she's Ashford's wife now? Pathetic. Lila forced a smile, her mouth twitching like it might tear. Sister. Grace, she said, eyes watery. I'm just used to it. I mean, I've celebrated that birthday for 20 years. That sentence was a knife. A reminder that she'd lived my life. Been congratulated in my place. Blown out candles in my place. Accepted gifts in my place. Been called my name without ever asking if I agreed. She looked at me like she was saying, I'm the rightful one. You're the thief. I set my coffee down. The sound was soft, but something inside me made a dry cracking noise. I looked straight at Lila. My smile stayed pretty, stayed gentle, and I thought, fine. If you want to remind me about those 20 years, then I'll remind you of something too. I used to be a mistake, but since yesterday, that mistake carries the Ashford name. And I just learned how to hear what people hide inside their heads. And your game? It's only just starting. I placed the bill on the table and slid it toward Lila. My voice was soft but clear, every word polished smooth. To cut deeper. Lila Harrington, you're wrong. The table went still. Her two friends kept their thin little smiles, like they were waiting for me to explode so they'd have a story for dinner. I didn't give them that satisfaction. First, I lifted my chin, eyes steady. My marriage to Alexander is something your family begged for. Don't use out of her league as a lullaby to make yourselves feel better. When you have to beg, you don't get to define anyone's value. I saw Lila's lip twitch. Inside her head, poison shot straight through. That bitch, she dares. I continued, calm as if I were reading contract terms. Second, even if my husband has mobility issues, I paused just long enough for them to hear it. He's still the legal heir to the Ashford family, and outsiders don't get an opinion. One of Lila's friends leaned forward, about to snap back, but my look shut her mouth like a coin pressed onto her tongue. Third, I picked up the black card, turned it slowly between my fingers, and waved it in front of them like a ticket into a world they were only allowed to stand outside of. My husband gave me unlimited spending power. I said, conversational. You should keep your $50,000 for pocket money. Lila's face flickered through colors like a cheap performance, white, then green, then red. Inside her head, a shriek went off. She's doing it on purpose. She's using the card to humiliate me. Who the hell does she think she is? Out loud, Lila went straight into her act. Her eyes filled perfectly. Her voice turned breathy, choked like she'd been slapped. Grace, how can you say that? I wasn't interested in watching anymore. I stood and adjusted my coat. If there's nothing else, I'm leaving, I said, checking my watch like a model wife. It's getting late. My husband will worry. I turned away. Behind me were clenched teeth, bitter thoughts bubbling, the helpless rage of people who'd gotten used to standing on my neck. I walked into the luxury shopping wing, white gold lights reflecting on the glass like water. I gave myself something I'd been denied for the last 2 weeks, the right to enjoy myself. As I lifted a leather bag to look closer, a familiar voice popped into my head, very near. That color doesn't suit her. White would look better. I turned. Alexander Ashford sat in a waiting area not far away, holding a finance magazine and pretending to read, so cold and still he looked like a statue placed in the wrong spot. Beside him was a young man with bright eyes, like he was watching a show right as it hit the good part. Seb, are you serious? The other man's thoughts whistled loud and clear. Following your wife to the mall. Where's your whole dark, scary disabled tycoon persona now? Oliver Fairfax. Alexander's best friend. The kind of guy who looked like he was born with a teasing smile. Alexander shot Oliver a glare that could freeze water. Shut up. Oliver just kept laughing in his head like fear wasn't a real concept. Wow. Someone's defensive. Who knew you'd turn into a lovesick stalker this fast? I pretended I didn't see them. I walked up to the counter and pointed. The white one, I said. That one too. And that one. Every version in white, wrap them all. The sales associate's eyes lit up like she'd hooked a whale. She spun around to start packaging. I walked past the waiting area at a measured pace, just close enough for Alexander to hear my heels. Immediately, he sat up straighter. The magazine lifted so high it nearly covered his face. Inside his head, chaos like a room full of alarms. She's coming. Did she see me? Should I say hi? No. If I say hi, it looks obvious. I'm just here by accident. Yeah, totally accidental. I had to fight a smile and kept walking without looking at him. After I paid, the associate handed me a mountain of shopping bags. I was about to leave when Oliver caught up, grinning like neon. Hi, sister-in-law. He bowed a little too dramatically. What a coincidence. You shopping too? I nodded. Call me Ollie. Oliver stepped closer, friendly and easy. You bought so much, no way you can carry all that. Want me to help you bring it out? Before I could answer, Alexander's thoughts roared. Ollie, you idiot. What do you think you're doing? Get away from my wife. The next second, Alexander's wheelchair slid forward, cutting the space between me and Oliver so fast. Oliver almost laughed out loud. Alexander looked at me. His voice was ice, pure command. We're going home. I nodded obediently, voice soft. Yes. Then, right in front of Oliver's stunned face, I calmly hung every single shopping bag over the armrests of Alexander's wheelchair, bag after bag, bright colors piling onto the black chair like draping a monument in trophies. Alexander went completely rigid. Inside his head it felt like boiling water got dumped straight on him. She hung all of it on my wheelchair. She's using me as a moving coat rack. He went silent for 1 second, then forced himself to accept it. Whatever. As long as my wife is happy. Oliver's shoulders shook, biting his lip until it went red so he wouldn't laugh. No way. This is insane. I need a picture. This is history. Alexander shot him a glare. Don't. Oliver instantly turned solemn like he'd heard a siren. Seb, sister-in-law. I just remembered I have something urgent, he said fast. You two take your time. And he vanished like a bullet. I pushed Alexander's wheelchair toward the exit. His body was stiff, like he wasn't used to being touched, especially not by me. Inside his head, he melted like foam on warm milk. She's holding my hands. She's so close. I can smell her hair. Why is my heart racing like this? At the car, Alexander snapped right back into his usual indifference, leaning back, closing his eyes like a king who just granted mercy. I watched the scenery slide past the window, then suddenly asked, Husband, I said it on purpose, sweet as candy. Why were you at the mall today? He didn't open his eyes. Work meeting. Inside his head, he was screaming like he'd just been caught red-handed. I'm lying. I'm lying. Does she believe it? Am I selling it? I let out a soft breath and didn't press. Silence settled over us. After a while, I heard him muttering inside, a rare note of self-blame. Is she mad? Was I too harsh earlier? This is all Ollie's fault. Then, like he suddenly remembered something, Alexander opened his eyes, pulled a velvet box from beside him, and held it out. This is for you. I opened it. A diamond necklace, delicate, intricate, sparkling in the sunlight. I recognized it immediately. It was the one I'd glanced at twice in the store. Just twice. Subtle. He noticed. I closed the box and pushed it back toward him, my voice calm. You shouldn't accept gifts without a reason. Alexander frowned. In his head he was a mess. Why won't she take it? Women don't like this? Or does she think I'm bribing her? Outwardly, he gave a cold little snort, rebuilding that arrogant wall. This is something you're entitled to as my wife. His voice was rock hard. It's not a reward. Put it on. Don't embarrass me. The excuse was so clumsy it was almost funny. But I liked it. I took the velvet box, leaned in closer so he couldn't retreat in time, and looked up at him. Then, I said softly, will you put it on me? Alexander stopped breathing. Inside his head, a flood of very inappropriate images burst loose along with a kind of pathetic innocence. So close. I can see her eyelashes. Her lips. Soft. He lifted the chain. His fingers cold brushed the back of my neck, making me shiver. In his mind, his heartbeat sped up, pounding like drums. Okay. His thoughts trembled. Can I kiss her? Just once. His face moved closer. Our breaths nearly touched. And right as his lips were about to meet mine, screech. The car braked hard. We both lurched forward. Alexander's forehead thunked into the back of the front seat. Gage, he groaned in pain. In his head, rage detonated. Which blind idiot just ruined my plan? Dock his pay. I'm docking his pay. The driver's voice came out panicked. I'm sorry, sir. I looked up. A bright red Porsche had cut us off, parked sideways like a dare. The door flew open and a woman stepped out in something loud as a peacock jewelry so flashy it nearly blinded. Victoria Ashford, Alexander's cousin. Famous for being spoiled, reckless, and convinced she spoke for the entire family. She marched straight to our window and slammed her palm against the glass. Alexander, get out here. Now. Alexander's face darkened. Whatever warmth had been left vanished like it had never existed. Inside his head, everything turned cold. What is she doing here? Reginald sent her. Reginald Ashford, Alexander's uncle, his biggest rival in the Ashford family, the man always waiting for a chance to drag Alexander off the throne. Alexander lowered the window, his voice pure ice. What do you want? Victoria crossed her arms, scanned me from head to toe with open contempt, and gave a thin smile. I came to meet the new sister-in-law, she said, dripping sarcasm. I hear she's a fake. She put weight on the word fake, like she was pressing a stain into fabric. The Ashfords may not be what we used to be, but we're not so desperate we let stray cats and dogs wander in. Victoria leaned in, smiling cruelly. You married an imposter. Aren't you afraid you'll be a laughingstock? Her words were sharp, poisonous, aimed straight at my face. I didn't answer right away. I just looked at Alexander, and in that moment, I heard something even more dangerous than Victoria's insult. A thought from Alexander, cold as steel pulled from fire. It's starting. I was about to speak when a cold laugh cracked through Alexander's mind, sharp as breaking ice. A laughingstock. The thought wasn't loud, but it carried the satisfaction of someone who'd seen the ending a long time ago. Just wait until I put your father in prison. Then we'll see who's laughing. Outside, Alexander was still Alexander, dark eyes, chin slightly lifted, voice calm like he was talking about the weather. This is my business, not yours. He didn't blink at Victoria. Move. No. Victoria was stubborn, her lips curving into a vicious smile. You think I don't know what you're plotting, Alex? She leaned closer, drawing out every word with contempt. You just want some easy woman you can control to lock down your position. Well, let me tell you, useless. Uncle Reginald said it himself. A cripple like you should know your place, and stop taking things you can't even use. I stared at her. The phrase can't even use was filthy. It didn't just insult Alexander. It trampled my whole existence too, like we were both defective items tossed into the same bin. I didn't wait for Alexander. I didn't wait for him to play the cold, suffering CEO to save face in front of the enemy. I lifted my hand. Smack. The sound snapped through the air, clean, final, like a period at the end of her sentence. Victoria clutched her cheek, eyes wide. She stared at me like a doll that had suddenly grown teeth. You hit me. I lowered my hand. My palm stung, but my voice was straight and cold. First, I said, I'm Alexander Ashford's legal wife. Not some knockoff you get to stand here and judge. Second, I stepped closer, meeting her eyes. My husband is not someone you get to lecture. Third, I lowered my voice. If you insult us one more time, a slap will be the lightest consequence you get. Victoria shook with rage, her mouth twitching like she wanted to cry but didn't dare. She pointed at me, stammering. You. She couldn't even form a full sentence. Beside me, Alexander kept his usual icy expression, like that slap had nothing to do with him. But inside his head, fireworks were exploding and cheering. Incredible. That's my wife. So badass. The way she protected me. I love it. Then he startled at himself, and immediately threw the wall back up. No. Keep distance. Can't let her see I'm happy. He cleared his throat and turned on me in perfect, ruthless CEO form. Ridiculous. His voice was icy. Who said you could hit someone? I almost laughed. Then he turned to the driver, even colder. What are you waiting for? Drive. He paused like he wanted to hammer the next words into Victoria's fear. If she blocks the road again, hit her. The driver hit the gas. The car surged forward. Victoria shrieked and jumped back. In the rearview mirror, I saw her stamping the ground, screaming and pointing at our car like she'd lost control. Inside the car, the silence stretched. Alexander sat beside me, face like stone, yet I could hear every thought rolling around inside him like a beast finally freed from its cage. So cool. My wife is so cool. That slap. Perfect. I've wanted to rip Victoria's mouth off for years. I should reward her when we get home. What do I buy? A bag. Jewelry. Too obvious. Damn it. How do I show her I'm grateful without giving it away? I closed my eyes and leaned back. Hitting people really is exhausting. When the car pulled into the Ashford estate, Edith was already waiting. The moment she saw us, she hurried over, respectful and anxious. "Sir, ma'am, Mr. Reginald Ashford is here. He's waiting for you in the sitting room." In that instant, I felt the temperature around Alexander shift. Colder, sharper, like a blade sliding out of a sheath. Reginald, his thoughts went rough. A fox coming to visit the henhouse. He never comes with good intentions. Alexander rolled into the sitting room. Reginald Ashford stood, a man in his 50s, refined features, gold-rimmed glasses, a polite smile that made you wary, the kind of politeness that hides a knife behind its back. "Alexander," Reginald said warmly, "you're home." His gaze landed on me like a hawk sizing up prey. "And this must be my niece-in-law." He smiled. "Stunning. A perfect match for Alexander." I gave a small nod. I didn't offer more. Alexander answered flatly. "Why are you here?" Reginald sighed and put on a wounded look, like a loving uncle. "I don't want to lecture you. But Victoria, she's been spoiled. She cares about you. Why would you let your wife hit her? If this gets out, what will people think?" Inside Alexander's head, the cold laugh returned. Keep acting, you old fox." On the outside, he curled his lips slightly. "Whatever makes you happy, uncle," he said lightly. "It was my wife's fault. She behaved irrationally. I already reprimanded her." Reginald nodded, satisfied like he'd just inspected a horse he planned to hitch to his own cart. Then he turned to me. His eyes pressed down, gentle and heavy at the same time. "My dear," he said, "you're new to the family. You may not understand the rules yet. From now on, watch your words and your behavior. Understood?" I lowered my head, obedient. "Yes, uncle." In Reginald's mind, a flash of contempt slid through, like a snake across a rug. "Good actress. Not bad." He lingered, asked about Alexander's health, asked a few questions about work, every one of them with a hook hidden inside. Then he stood to leave, that smile still glued to his face like a mask. The moment the door shut, the room changed instantly. The fake calm fell off Alexander's face. What showed underneath was a cold, hostile current. "That fox," his thoughts growled. "One day I'll tear off his mask." Then he looked at me. His eyes were complicated. And this time his thoughts weren't anger or thrill, they were heavy. Like responsibility. She slapped Victoria today. She offended Reginald because of me. From now on, she won't have an easy life in the Ashford house. I have to protect her. I walked closer. I crouched in front of the wheelchair and looked up at him, close enough to see tension at his jaw, close enough that he couldn't escape. "Baby," I said softly. "What are you hiding from me?" Alexander's pupils tightened. In his head, a warning blared like a fire alarm. What did she find? Lev Reshin. What did she find? Who told her? Ollie? Edith? No. Or did she figure it out herself? When? Last night? Or earlier? His face stayed cold. His voice worked hard to hold steady. "I don't know what you're talking about." I held his gaze and placed each word carefully, like setting a chess piece down. "Your legs were never paralyzed," I said. "Right?" The air froze. Alexander's face went pale for a beat. In his eyes, shock, suspicion, then a razor-thin flash of fury. Like he wanted to kill the person who'd ripped his mask off. Inside his head was a storm. How? How does she know? Who? Who told her? Impossible. Did she figure it out? Last night, I stood by her bed. I kissed her forehead. Did she open her eyes? I didn't flinch. I took the look that wanted to shred me. Because I'd gambled and I had to win. I kept going, voice low so Edith or anyone in the hall couldn't hear. "And that accident," I said. "It wasn't an accident. It was arranged. By Reginald. You've been pretending to cooperate. Pretending to be disabled." I stared straight at him. "So he'd let his guard down. So you could collect evidence. Then take him out in one move." Alexander's breathing got heavier. He didn't admit it. Didn't deny it. He just looked at me like he was trying to see through bone. Inside his head, suspicion surged like a tidal wave. She knows everything. Who is she, really? A girl raised by mistake. Doesn't come this sharp. What is her real goal in coming near me? I sighed internally. Guessing wasn't enough. I needed to hand him something even a paranoid man couldn't dismiss. I stood, leaned down, brought my mouth close to his ear, and whispered so only we could hear. Reginald has a mole in your company, I said. Finance. An assistant deputy director named Agatha Mercer. Her son has gambling debt overseas. I pressed the point softly. Reginald paid it off for her. Alexander flinched. He snapped his head up to stare at me, eyes wide like he'd just been shot straight through the heart. Inside his head, deadly blankness, then something collapsing. No. That lead. I've been chasing forever. Only me and Ollie knew. There was no third person. How does she know? His defenses caved in piece by piece, even as he tried to keep his face cold. I straightened and looked at him calmly. Do you believe me now? I said. I'm not your enemy. Inside Alexander's mind, a quiet thought dropped heavy as a stone sinking to the bottom of water. If she isn't my enemy, then she's something even more dangerous. An ally. And my wife. He stared at me for a long time. So long I could hear his heartbeat change rhythm. Then he spoke. Voice a little rougher, like he was saying something real for the first time. Tell me, who are you? And what do you want? I met his eyes. My voice wasn't loud, but every word landed like a seal being pressed into wax. The moment I put on the ring you gave me, we got on the same boat. I said. Your enemy is my enemy too. The room fell silent for a long, long moment. Alexander didn't blink. He looked like he was using silence to weigh me like people weigh gold with fire. Finally, he spoke, his voice rough, asking the only thing he truly cared about. How do you know all of that? I smiled so light it was almost harmless. When I was still at the Harrington house, I said, using that exact name on purpose so he'd understand. I saw too many dirty tricks up close. You start recognizing the smell. He didn't believe me. Not really. I could hear it in the pace of his heartbeat, in the tight line at his jaw, and in the way his thoughts rippled like water right before a storm. She's not telling the truth, but she's right. And she's on my side. Something inside him, calm as a verdict, whispered. However, she knows it. She handed me a real lead. She's not trying to hurt me. And now, I need her. Alexander's eyes changed. It wasn't just the possessive hunger of a man who's used to giving orders. There was something more dangerous in it now, admiration, and worse, dependence. Come here, he said. He held out his hand, palm open like an invitation, and a trap. I stepped closer and placed my hand in his. He yanked hard. Before I could make a sound, I stumbled straight into his lap. Clean shirt, cold wood cologne, and a racing heartbeat hit me like a wave. I startled and instinctively tried to pull back. But his arms locked around my waist, holding me like if he let go for even a second, I'd vanish. Don't move. His voice dropped, hot against my skin. He buried his face in the curve of my neck and exhaled like he'd been carrying exhaustion for a long time. Let me hold you for a minute. Inside his head, the words fell soft as snow. Soft. Good. This is what it feels like to hold someone I want to protect. Against my better judgment, I felt my heart soften a little. My body, stiff as a plank at first, slowly relaxed. Something strange seeped into my bones, being trusted, being leaned on. Like for the first time in my life, there was a place that didn't demand I stay curled up and guarded. After I exposed Alexander's secret, he let go around me completely when we were alone. In public, he was still the cold, distant, disabled kingpin, quiet and brooding, like a black statue planted in the middle of a boardroom. He stayed in his wheelchair, spoke little, looked at people in a way that made them lower their eyes. But when it was just the two of us, he stole every quiet moment to stand up from the chair like he was shedding heavy armor. Some days I'd be reading and he'd come up behind me without a sound, wrap his arms around me from the back, and rest his chin on my shoulder like a stubborn kid. Other days he'd lay his head in my lap, eyes half closed, and whisper, read it out loud for me. And of course, what he liked most wasn't novels. It wasn't poetry. It was when I trashed Reginald and Victoria. Every time I said their names with venom, Alexander's mind lit up like a city at night. Perfect. That's the exact word. Keep going. My wife is seriously talented. She can slap a spoiled princess and crush a shameless old fox. Our relationship moved fast, unreasonably fast, but weirdly, it worked. Like two people shoved to the edge of a cliff who accidentally figured out how to lean on each other. So, neither one fell. Until one day, my phone buzzed. Richard Harrington. His voice was softer than Maggie's, but the arrogance and the habit of giving orders was stamped into him like a mold. "Grace," he said, "like I still belong to that house. Come home this weekend. It's Lila's birthday." He paused, then added a line that was really a command dressed up as duty. "As her biological sister, how could you not come to your sister's birthday?" I almost laughed. Lila's birthday was the same birthday I'd been blowing out candles for 20 years. In past years they threw me lavish parties, lights, a 3-tier cake, well wishes bursting like fireworks. This year the main character had changed, but they still wanted me back. To be background, I answered flatly, "I'm busy." No politeness, no small talk, no saving anyone's face. Richard's voice darkened instantly, like clouds rolling in. "Grace," he bit off each word, "don't forget your position. Even if you married Alexander, you're still a Harrington. We're asking you to come back because we're giving you a chance to show respect." In his mind, something much more honest spat out. "Ungrateful little brat. She's getting worse. If it weren't for Ashford, I wouldn't even bother." It made my skin crawl. The hypocrisy. The way they still thought I was an object they could summon whenever they felt like it. "Mr. Harrington," I said, my voice turning cold, "don't call me again unless it's truly necessary." I hung up and immediately blocked the number. Alexander walked out of his study right as I set the phone down. He glanced at the screen, then at my expression, and the corner of his mouth lifted. "Well done," his thoughts nodded. "You should have blocked them a long time ago." He came closer and handed me a cup of warm milk like he was calming down a cat that had just been provoked. "Don't waste your anger on people who don't deserve it," he said. I took the cup, warmth spreading into my palm. "I'm not angry," I said. Then I looked up and smiled. "I'm thinking what kind of birthday gift I should get Lila." Alexander's brow lifted. Inside his head, he perked up like someone who just heard the word plan. "Oh, what is my wife plotting? Love this." Out loud, he kept his indifferent face. "Need my help?" I shook my head. "No," I said. "I can handle it." That weekend, Lila's birthday party was so extravagant, it was almost obscene. It was held on the lawn of the Harrington estate, white tents, like a small wedding, string lights everywhere, fresh flowers arranged into an archway. Invitations went out across the city's upper crust like a stamp that said, "The real princess is back." And there was another purpose quieter, but everyone could smell it. They wanted to announce Lila's upcoming engagement to Henry Rutherford. The Rutherfords were another prestigious East Coast family, prestige that came with money and quiet contracts signed behind glass doors. That night, Lila wore a custom-made princess gown, jewelry sparkling like it wanted to steal every bit of light and pull it into her. She moved through the crowd like a peacock, chin lifted. Smile rehearsed like standing there alone was already victory. When Alexander and I arrived, a wave of whispering rolled through the lawn. Everyone knew the story. The real daughter versus the mistake. Everyone wanted to see whether tonight would end in blood or tears. My adoptive parents rushed over, smiles strapped on like masks. "Alexander, Grace, Maggie was sweet enough to make your skin crawl. You're here." Alexander only gave a small nod. Lila walked up too, looping her arm through mine like we were truly sisters. "Sister, you finally came," she said. "I thought you wouldn't." As she spoke, her eyes kept flicking toward Alexander. And inside her head, something far more honest than any greeting poured out. "He looks so good tonight. Too bad he's disabled. Whatever. I'm marrying Henry Rutherford. My status will be higher than that fake girl's." "Then let's see her act smug." I smiled and didn't react. I simply reached into my bag and took out a beautifully wrapped gift box, silver paper, black ribbon, tasteful enough to look sincere. I handed it to Lila, my voice sweet and perfect. "Of course I'd come to your birthday," I said. "This is what I prepared. Happy birthday." Lila took it, her eyes lighting up. She was eager to open it right there, in front of everyone. I didn't stop her. I just stood there calmly and watched her pull the ribbon. Inside Alexander's head, a thought flickered, curious and wary. My wife definitely didn't bring a nice gift. Every neck at the party stretched at the same time. I could feel it, a wave of curiosity rolling across the lawn. Everyone wanted to see what Grace Harrington would give. A limited edition bag, expensive jewelry, at the very least, something luxurious enough to prove she wasn't losing. Lila held the gift like she was trying to hide her excitement behind a gentle smile. She stood under the lights like a queen about to accept tribute. "You put so much thought into it," she said, voice soft as velvet. But in her head it sounded completely different. "Let's see what you brought. If you lose in front of everyone, I win for good." Lila pulled the ribbon, lifted the lid. The smile on her lips froze like someone dumped ice water straight onto her face. A collective inhale rippled through the crowd. There was no jewelry inside. No designer bag. Nothing sparkling, nothing that made people gasp in admiration. Just a thick stack of printed papers. The first page had bold black letters, clear, brutal. Investigative report. Regarding Richard Harrington's affair, illegal asset transfers, and suspicious facts related to Lila Harrington's identity. The lawn fell into a dead, murderous silence. Even the background music seemed to choke. Across the way, Richard Harrington went pale like he'd been yanked out of freezing water. Maggie Harrington looked like she'd been struck by lightning white, then flushing red with rage so intense she could barely breathe. "You're lying!" Maggie screamed, lunging to snatch the file from Lila's hands. "Grace, you're insane. What are you trying to do? Making this up?" I leaned aside and let her hand grab only air. Then I pulled out another copy already prepared and placed it directly into the hands of a reporter nearby who still looked too shocked to blink. "To the press," I said, calm as if I were introducing a menu. "This report documents that Richard Harrington resumed a relationship with his first love while he was married." I looked straight at Richard. He tried to hold on to his authority, but his eyes were panicked like a man being stripped in the middle of a marketplace. It also records how he gradually moved Harrington Group assets into shell companies under his mistress's name. I paused on purpose, letting the crowd swallow the words. "Oh, and one more thing." I turned to Lila. She was still stiff as a doll with its strings cut. I smiled a smile that was beautiful and cruel. "Actually, I've known for a long time that I'm not their biological daughter," I said, "because I saw Richard with that woman with my own eyes." Maggie shook like a branch in a storm. I didn't give her room to interrupt. "So the so-called switched at birth," I emphasized every word, "was a script from the very beginning. A scheme to legitimize an illegitimate child's place in this family." I tilted my head slightly. "And both Maggie and I were victims of that deception." The sentence detonated like a bomb. Whispers burst out loud, popping like bubbles on water. Maggie stared at Richard, lips trembling so hard she couldn't even form a sound. In her mind, the truth dropped like a cliff. Oh my God. So that woman was his white moonlight all these decades. I raised my enemy's child as my own, and the real enemy has been in my bed this whole time. Richard Harrington panicked. He pointed at me and roared, his voice trying to sound threatening but coming out hollow. "You're slandering me," he shouted. "This is all fabricated. I'll sue you for defamation." "Oh, really?" I fanned the report lightly, almost amused. "Because it includes transaction histories, contracts, shell company filings, and even DNA test results." I stared at him without blinking. "Those aren't things you can fake." Of course, I didn't dig up every piece of evidence myself like some detective. Alexander did. When I said I wanted to give Lila a really big gift, he'd quietly hunted behind the scenes like a predator and handed me exactly what I needed, a killing blow with no way out. I stood on that lawn and watched the Harrington family collapse without a flicker of pity. Calm. Finished. Beside me, Alexander said nothing. He just observed like he was watching a trial where he'd already written the verdict. But inside his head, thoughts flooded so thick they nearly filled the air. Perfect. My wife is incredible. Pull the rug out from under them. One clean kill. Cold. Richard deserved to be destroyed a long time ago. Then another thought. Unexpectedly soft like a breath. Wait. She said she and Maggie were both victims. That means she didn't trick me on purpose. Thank God. In the chaos, I quietly pushed Alexander's wheelchair out of the party. I didn't need to hear more crying. I didn't need to watch more humiliation. I'd waited too long for this day. The Harrington scandal tore through the city like a tornado. Harrington Group stock crashed off a cliff. Investors ran. Partners cut contracts. They wobbled on the edge of bankruptcy. Maggie and Richard filed for divorce. Their legal war became tabloid entertainment, and Lila, the real princess, was dragged down into illegitimate child, the one status high society hates most. Not clean. The engagement to Henry Rutherford fell apart in silence, and Lila became the joke of the same people who used to lift her skirt and praise her. Everything happened exactly the way I planned. Except for one thing I didn't expect. Lila came to find me. On a rainy day, she knelt at the Ashford estate gates, soaked head to toe, hair plastered to her face, dress muddy, shoulders shaking from cold and humiliation. Edith softened at the sight and came to tell me. I didn't even look up from my book. Tell her to leave. Alexander sat nearby peeling an apple. He paused mid-slice, the knife stopping against the skin. In his head, irritation cracked like teeth grinding. Letting her walk away is way too kind. Out loud, he said coldly. Call security and drag her out. He cut the apple into small pieces, speared one, and brought it to my lips like it was a daily ritual. I opened my mouth and took it. Sweet. I watched the rain streak the window, then changed my mind. Let her in. Alexander turned, confused. Inside his head, alarm lights flashed. Why is my wife going soft? No. No. You can't be merciful to an enemy. I smiled. The smile wasn't soft at all. I just want to see how pathetic she looks, I said. Alexander went still. Then inside his head, he got flustered, excited in a way that was honestly embarrassing. Oh, my wife wants to watch the show. I love this hobby. Little sly kitten. Cute. Soon, Lila was led inside. She stood in the center of the grand foyer, shaking. No trace left of the proud princess. Just a girl crushed into ruin, eyes red, lips pale, dirty and dripping like a bird that fell out of its nest. The second she saw me, Lila lunged forward and dropped to her knees, clinging to the hem of my pants like it was her last life raft. She sobbed, voice raw. Grace, sister. I was wrong. I was really wrong. Can you forgive me? It's all my dad's fault. He lied to me. I never thought it would turn into this. She looked up, tears and snot mixing on her face. Please help me. Talk to Alexander. Help my family. Okay? If you don't, we're really going to be destroyed. I wrinkled my nose in disgust and pulled my leg back. Alexander instantly handed me a wet wipe, like it was pure reflex. In his head, he was snarling. Dirty. Don't touch my wife. I wiped the spot where she'd grabbed me, then bent down to look at her. My gaze was cold as a winter lake. Lila, I said. Did you forget? I cut ties with you. A long time ago. And whether you live or die, I added softly, has nothing to do with me. Lila jerked her head up like she'd been cornered into madness. No, she screamed. You can't be this heartless. They raised you for 20 years. She sobbed, her voice cracking. Are you really going to stand there and watch them die? I stared at her. Then I laughed. It was a light laugh but sharp, like a blade slicing through ice. Raised me? For 20 years? I tilted my head, smile still there. Lila, I said slowly. Do you want me to tell you what those 20 years looked like? Yeah. I looked her dead in the eye. My voice calm to the point of cruelty. They raised me for 20 years, just to sell me off like merchandise to Alexander in the end. Lila went still. Her mouth opened, then closed again like a fish thrown onto land, suddenly forgetting how to breathe. You forced me to take your place at the wedding. Lila shouted, like volume alone could turn her into the victim. Did you ever think about the fact that we were sisters for 20 years? I looked down at her, and a faint, almost amused feeling spread in my chest. Sisters, I repeated, like I was chewing on a foreign word. Lila, I said, lowering my voice. You only remember me when you're in trouble. Do you really think I'm some saint who's going to repay kindness? Lila's face went pale, like the last layer of makeup had been stripped off. She realized begging me was useless. And like a drowning person, she immediately switched targets. On her knees, she crawled toward Alexander's wheelchair, looking up at him with wet, pitiful eyes so convincing that if you didn't know better, you'd think she was an angel being wronged. Brother-in-law, she choked out. I know you're a good man. You can't just watch my family fall apart like this, can you? Her voice turned syrup sweet then dropped lower, dirtier. If you're willing to help, I'll do anything for you. As she said it, she reached out, trying to grab at Alexander's pant leg like it was a lifeline. Alexander's whole expression darkened instantly. I felt his disgust like a cold current snapping through the room. In his head, he roared. Back off. Don't touch me with those filthy hands. Disgusting. He was about to explode when I spoke first. My voice slow and gentle, like I was telling a bedtime story. The only difference was this story was meant to kill. Lila, I said. Do you know something? When your parents came to propose their daughter, I held her gaze without blinking. The Ashfords had actually been looking at you. Lila froze. She snapped her head toward me, then toward Alexander. Her face was disbelief mixed with panic, like she'd just heard her entire life hit the floor. I kept going, each word landing heavy. In their eyes, you, the real princess, were the one who deserved that spot. I emphasized it. Me? The kid they raised by mistake? They didn't even bother to look. I tilted my head. But what about you? You looked down on Alexander because he was disabled, I said, flipping through her like a file. You refused that marriage. And your parents couldn't stand the idea of you suffering. So they came up with something. I smiled. They shoved me in your place. I leaned down just enough for my voice to slide into her ear like a second slap. So you're the one who pushed me into becoming Mrs. Ashford. I paused, letting it sink in. Then I asked, softly, too softly, should I thank you, nicely? Lila's eyes widened, and everything churned there: regret, jealousy, hatred. She looked at me, looked at Alexander, then looked at this mansion: polished stone floors, high ceilings, rich wood, warm lights, everything she'd always believed should have been hers. The moment she realized she'd thrown that chance away with her own hands, her last line of defense collapsed. Lila screamed like a madwoman. Then she lunged at me. Claws up. Grace. I'll kill you. Alexander's face changed instantly. Instinctively, he started to spring up from the wheelchair to shield me. But he didn't need to. I didn't move. The second Lila's nails were about to rake my face, the butler and 2 guards surged in like shadows and slammed her down, pinned to the floor. Lila still thrashed and screamed, rain-soaked hair whipping around like sparking wires. I watched, calm enough to be terrifying. I spoke to the butler like I was ordering tea. Send her to a psychiatric hospital. I looked at Lila struggling, my eyes not even flickering. I think she's actually lost it. Alexander looked at me. In his head, a sigh rolled through, half satisfied, half aching. Yeah. My wife isn't soft. My wife is right. After the Harrington mess was cleaned up, my life got a lot quieter. But that quiet didn't last the way I expected. Because the relationship between Alexander and me shifted into something else. He wasn't satisfied anymore with stolen hugs, accidental kisses, or standing up only when we were alone. He started openly claiming his rights, a husband's rights. That night, instead of going back to his office, Alexander walked straight into my bedroom. After his shower, he came out of the bathroom with nothing but a towel around his waist. Water clung to his chest, slid down his hard stomach, and disappeared beneath the towel like a visual trap. I was reading. I looked up, saw him, and my face instantly burned. In his head, smugness flared like liquor. She's blushing. She thinks I'm hot. Perfect. On the outside, he stayed serious, like he just stepped out of a board meeting. He walked to the bed, voice cold, not asking. Tonight I'm sleeping here. Not a suggestion. A statement. Before I could react, he flipped back the blanket and climbed in. Half the mattress dipped. Heat from his body seemed to spread through the air and burn straight into my skin. My heart started racing so fast I hated myself for it. In his head, it was worse. She's nervous. I'm nervous. What do I do? Kiss her now? Or say something sweet? Books say women like sweet talk. He hesitated. Then he turned, looked at me, and tried to use a tender tone, something he clearly wasn't used to. Grace. I answered, small and tight. He took a breath like someone about to jump into cold water. Today, when you yelled at people, he said slowly, you were really pretty. I froze for a second. That compliment was a disaster. In his head, panic hit immediately. Why isn't she saying anything? She doesn't like it? I said it wrong. I ruined everything. I looked at his handsome face, weirdly flustered, and I couldn't hold it in. I laughed. Alexander went stiff. In his head, a string of exclamation points lit up. She laughed. Why? She likes that. I leaned in, pressed a soft kiss to his mouth. Then I whispered loud enough for him to hear. Close enough that he couldn't defend himself. Today, when you got jealous, I said. You were adorable. Alexander turned to stone. In his head, the exclamation points exploded so hard I almost thought I'd hear the blast. She kissed me. She kissed me first. She called me adorable. While he was still stunned, I turned my back, pulled the blanket up like I'd just done something completely normal. Good night. A long time later, I finally felt his arm slide around me from behind, careful, like he was afraid I'd break. His voice shook so much, it was almost inaudible. Good night, sweetheart. Days passed, and the final night of Alexander and Reginald's fight felt like it was getting closer. Alexander got busier late nights in his office, quiet calls, meetings with no names. Meanwhile, Reginald started sniffing out that something was off. He moved more often, more openly, building factions inside the company, removing people loyal to Alexander one by one, ripping weeds out by the root. And then, he started looking at me. One day, I got a call from an unknown number. The man's voice on the other end was rough and slow, like it had been dragged up from the bottom of a well. Grace, he said. My daughter. I'm your biological father. I stood there for a few seconds after I hung up, like I'd just heard someone else's story. Then I remembered something bitterly funny. Even if the Harringtons raised me by mistake, even if they spent 20 years turning me into a product with a label, I could still have real blood family out there. After the explosion at the party, Maggie Harrington completely broke. They moved her into a luxury care facility, sitting by a window every day, sometimes lucid, sometimes hollow-eyed. Richard Harrington got dragged through legal and media warfare until he didn't look like a tycoon anymore. And right then my birth parents appeared. I told Alexander. That day he was standing behind me, blow-drying my hair. The dryer cut off the second I said. They called me. Said they're my real parents. In his head, I heard something tap coldly like fingernails on glass. Her biological parents. What do they want? Money. Or a trap? Out loud, he stayed calm enough to irritate me. You can meet them if you want, he said. If you don't, then don't. Up to you. At the time, I answered immediately. I don't want to. I had no expectations. No affection. A family I'd never seen, never hugged me, never saved me from the Harringtons, was just a concept to me. But this time they reached out first. I hesitated for a long time. In the end, I agreed. We met at a small cafe in Midtown, the kind of place where people speak politely enough to hide their real purpose. When I arrived, a middle-aged couple was already waiting. Plain clothes, nervous hands, eyes darting around like they were afraid someone was following them. The moment they saw me, they jumped up, smiles, snapping into place faster than courtesy. You're Grace, right? The woman trembled, eyes instantly red like she'd practiced in the mirror. I nodded and sat across from them. No small talk. Why are you looking for me? They glanced at each other. The man rubbed his hands together, forcing pain into his voice. Grace, we know this is sudden. He swallowed. But your little brother? He's in danger. My heart hitched. Little brother? I have a little brother? He has leukemia, the man continued, voice cracking. He needs a bone marrow transplant. We've tested everyone. No one matches. He lowered his head like he was about to kneel. The doctor said, siblings have the highest chance. Grace. His voice broke. I'm begging you. Save your brother. He actually dropped to his knees. I jolted, reached out, and pulled him up. My chest was a mess of noise. A brother I'd never met. No memories. No feelings. But it was a life. I couldn't just watch. Which hospital? I asked. The man looked like he'd been unlocked. He rattled off the hospital name, the address, the department. The woman nodded frantically, like she was afraid I'd change my mind. I promised I'd go get tested as soon as possible. They thanked me over and left. And I sat there for a long time. The coffee cooled. The cafe sounds felt distant. I stared out at the street like it was behind thick glass. Then my phone buzzed. Alexander, where are you? His voice was low, tired. I'm done. I'll come get you. 30 minutes later, his car stopped in front of the cafe. The second I got in, he looked at me sharp as a scalpel. What happened? He asked. Who made you upset? You look bad. I told him everything. The birth parents. The brother. The transplant. Alexander stayed quiet for a moment. Then he pulled me into his arms, holding me tight like if he let go, I'd fall. Don't be scared, he said quietly. I'm here. But inside his head I heard another layer, colder, sharper, dangerous. Leukemia. Transplant. Too convenient. Smells like a trap. Reginald. Is this him? I was the idiot worrying about a relative I'd never met. The next day, I went to the hospital for testing. The results came faster than I expected. A match. Success rate. 99%. The woman hugged me and sobbed like I was truly a miracle. Thank God, she cried. My son is going to live. Grace. You're the savior of this family. I looked through the glass into the patient room. A boy lay in bed. Pale. IV in his arm, lips dry. He looked 17 or 18, the age where you're supposed to live. Laugh. Fall in love with someone. Relief washed through me. The procedure was scheduled for 3 days later. I told Alexander. He was reading documents. When I spoke, he lifted his head and stared at me for a long time. Eyes so deep it made my skin go cold. Have you really thought this through? In his head, a different sentence snapped full of thorns. Sweet, stupid wife. This is obviously a trap. But how do I say it without making her think I'm heartless? I nodded. I've decided, I said. He's still my brother. Alexander didn't argue. He only told me to take care of myself. For the next 2 days, I stayed home resting, preparing to donate. Alexander put work aside. Stayed with me. He talked, watched movies with me, cooked things I liked, even silently peeled fruit and fed me bites like it was habit. He was gentle enough that I almost forgot I'd lived in a war zone. I sank into that gentleness completely, missing that danger was crawling closer. The night before the procedure, the hospital called. It was my birth mother. Her voice was choked with tears, panic-stricken. Grace. It's terrible, she sobbed. Come right now. Your brother. He's bleeding internally. Emergency surgery. My heart clenched. I jumped up to get dressed. Alexander grabbed my wrist. I'm coming with you, he said, voice hard. In his head, something cold clicked. Finally. Reginald's finally making a move. We reached the hospital while the OR lights were still on. My birth parents were outside the doors. Frantic. The moment they saw me, they swarmed me. Grace. You're here. The man fired off. The doctor said it's critical, he needs surgery right now. Then he lowered his voice, dropping the hook. But the blood bank doesn't have enough. His blood type is rare. He stared at me. And you have the same type, right? Donate. Now. Save your brother. I didn't hesitate. I turned to go find a doctor. But Alexander tightened his grip and yanked me back. He looked at me with something I couldn't name fast enough: pain, fury, and the urge to smash something into dust. Grace, he said slowly, each word like a nail. Do you know how much blood a normal person can donate at once? I blinked. 400 milliliters, he said. More than that is dangerous. He looked me straight in the face. And a leukemia patient with massive bleeding needs at least 2,000 milliliters. He paused, letting it land. They want you dead. My head rang blank, buzzing. I stared at the couple in front of me like I couldn't believe what I was seeing. On their faces, a flash of panic and guilt passed so fast I would have missed it if I hadn't been frozen. The man stammered. What are you talking about? How could we hurt our own daughter? He forced a laugh. We're just terrified. Alexander laughed under his breath, cold, metallic. Terrified? He repeated. Terrified enough to forget to hide the $5 million Reginald paid you. He pulled out his phone and opened a photo. On the screen, clear as day, that couple was meeting Reginald Ashford in a parking garage. Reginald stood there like a king handing out charity, and in their hands was a check. My heart dropped in one hard beat. So from start to finish, it was a con. A trap built out of fake blood, fake tears, and the word family, the word I'd secretly wanted my whole life. They weren't my family. They were hired executioners holding a price tag in their hands. I don't remember how I left the hospital. Only the cold. My limbs stiff as wood. Like a puppet with its soul ripped out. Something inside me tore. Alexander held me the whole way home like he was trying to pour warmth into someone freezing to death. When we got back, he sat me on the couch and handed me a mug of hot water. His voice was awkward, Like comforting wasn't something he'd ever learned. Don't cry, he said. That bastard isn't worth your tears. In his head, a curse slammed down like a hammer. Damn it. I should have told her sooner. Seeing her like this, my heart is breaking. Reginald, I'm not letting you walk away. I gripped the mug so hard my knuckles went white. Then the tears betrayed me, dripping down, hot and humiliating. I wasn't sad. I was scared. If Alexander hadn't been there, I might have died on an operating table tonight, inside a trap wrapped in the word family. I looked up at him, my voice rough. They, and that boy, they were all acting. Alexander nodded. The boy is sick, he said, calm like he was reading a report. But the real match donor was secured a long time ago. The transplant already succeeded. My heart jumped. He continued, his voice turning colder. Reginald just borrowed him for the script. That couple are professional scammers selling tears for money. They'll do anything. I shut my eyes and took a deep breath. Sometimes the world is filthier than I ever imagined. I opened my eyes and looked straight at Alexander. When are you setting the trap? He paused, then understood immediately. Very soon, he said. The shareholders' meeting next Monday. Good. I nodded, my eyes ice cold. Then before that, I set the mug down on the table. The sound was soft, but it landed like a sentence. Send him one last big gift. I smiled, but it wasn't really a smile. Reginald wants me dead. Right? Then I'm going to show him what it looks like to live with a fate worse than death. The next day, a video blew up online. No clickbait title, no artsy editing. Just the truth. The video exposed the entire deal between Reginald Ashford and the fake biological parents who claimed me. Every audio clip, every text message, every plan they mapped out, like they were writing a script. They talked about how to use people's sympathy for a sick kid. They talked about how to lure me in step-by-step crying phone calls, a fake emergency, pressuring me to donate blood. At the end of the video, bank statements popped up on screen, every transfer crystal clear. Proof you couldn't deny. A small stone that stirred up the entire sea. Ashford Group's stock tanked. The press swarmed. The police showed up. Reginald was arrested for investigation. Suspected attempted murder, bribery, coercion. The polished gentleman image he'd spent decades building collapsed in a single morning. I watched on TV as they cuffed him, wrinkled suit, dark circles under his eyes, drained and hollow like a shadow. Weird thing was, I didn't feel satisfied. All that was left was this numb, paralyzed quiet, like after the gunfire stops, but your ears are still ringing. Alexander stood behind me, wrapped his arms around me, rested his chin on the top of my head. It's over, he murmured. I closed my eyes. Yeah, I said. It's over. The people who wanted me dead had been dragged into the light, and I thought I could finally start over. But that Monday was Ashford Group's shareholders' meeting. The day the Ashfords' fate would be decided. The day Alexander put every card on the table. I went with him, as his wife. Inside the boardroom, the air was tight as a wire. The shareholders who'd backed Reginald looked pale, sitting still as stone. The ones backing Alexander looked bright, trying to stay composed, but their hands were rubbing together like they couldn't wait. The meeting started. The interim chairman, Alexander's grandfather, announced Reginald's disciplinary ruling. Removed from all positions. Voting rights revoked. His shares are transferred to Alexander under the board's emergency clause. No one objected. Everyone thought the rest was just procedure. Vote in the new chairman. And everyone was sure Alexander would take the seat. But right then, the boardroom doors flew open. A woman walked in wearing a hospital robe, her face bloodless like she'd just crawled out of a nightmare. A lawyer walked beside her. The second Alexander saw her, his expression changed. In his head, alarm screamed. Mom, why is she here? What does she want? I recognized her. Celeste Ashford, Alexander's mother. The woman who'd disappeared from the U.S. after her son's accident, living in seclusion out of grief and guilt, never showing her face in high society for years. She walked straight to the table. Her eyes swept over the shareholders like a blade, then stopped on Alexander. Her face held too many emotions at once: pain, guilt, and a quiet resentment that had been fed for far too long. She spoke softly, but her voice carried through the whole room. I object. The entire room seemed to blow up in a wordless, stunned gasp. I object to Alexander becoming chairman of Ashford Group. Alexander sat in his wheelchair, lips pressed so hard they'd gone white. He stared at his mother like she was a stranger. In his mind, I heard something crack. Why? She knows I'm faking. Why is she siding with the enemy? Celeste took a folder from her lawyer. This is my husband's will, she said. Alexander's father. She flipped a page like she was flipping a knife. It clearly states, if Alexander's health prevents him from serving as chairman, then all shares in his name will be held and managed by me as his legal representative. She looked up. Her ice-cold gaze hit Alexander dead on. Until he's fully recovered. She stressed every word. And right now, my son is disabled, so I have the right to take over. The words dropped like a rock into a lake. Shockwaves. The shareholders who'd supported Reginald immediately changed their tune, like a school of fish turning with the current. We support Mrs. Ashford. Alexander's condition makes him unfit. We trust Celeste Ashford to lead. The people who'd backed Alexander exchanged looks, uncertain now. One side, the rightful heir. The other, the person holding the will. The air turned into a hunt. Alexander drew a deep breath, like he was about to speak. But before he could, I placed my hand over his. His hand was cold as steel. I stood up, faced Celeste, smiled very lightly. Mrs. Celeste, I said, are you sure you're not misunderstanding something? She looked at me, sharp and disdainful. I continued, calm. My husband was never disabled in the first place. The whole room froze like the power had been cut. I set my hand on Alexander's shoulder, and under the shocked stares of everyone sitting there with their mouths hanging open, I pulled him up out of the wheelchair. Alexander stood, long legs, steady, strong, no sign of paralysis at all. For a moment, the room was so silent you could hear someone drop a pen. Celeste went ghost white. She pointed at her son, lips shaking, unable to form a sentence. You. I linked my arm through Alexander's, smiling bright as stage lights. Mrs. Celeste, I said sweetly, cruelly. Looks like my husband is fully recovered now. I tilted my head. So according to the will, doesn't that mean he has every right to take back what belongs to him? After that, nothing was surprising. The so-called shareholder war turned into a joke. No one dared argue with the truth standing right in front of them. Alexander was voted in as the new chairman. Celeste left in silent despair, like someone who'd lost a war without even realizing when the battle started. I watched her back disappear through the doors. And Alexander, his face was paper white. He didn't say a word, but I knew he was hurting. That night he drank a lot. He held me, buried his face in my shoulder like a kid who'd been abandoned. He didn't sob out loud, but my shoulder was wet. Why would she treat me like that? He rasped. Just because Dad's death had something to do with me. But it wasn't my fault. I held him tighter, rubbing his back in slow, steady strokes. And for the first time, I heard him tell the story broken up, like swallowing blood. Alexander's father, the former chairman of Ashford Group, died in a car crash while driving his son to a racing event. That crash was set up by Reginald. But back then, everyone believed it was just a tragic coincidence. Everyone except Celeste. She dumped all the guilt onto Alexander. She believed that if Alexander hadn't stubbornly chased racing, her husband wouldn't have died. And that belief turned her into the kind of mother who could stab her own son right as he was about to win. That's why Celeste hated him enough that she'd rather hand the entire empire to an outsider than watch her son touch the Ashford throne. Hearing it made my chest ache, like a shard of ice slicing straight through my ribs. I lifted Alexander's face in both hands and forced him to look at me, no more hiding in the dark. Alexander, I said, slow and certain, this is not your fault. You're a victim, just like your father. The real criminal is Reginald. His eyes were red, wild like a wounded animal, hurt and furious and lost, not even sure where to put the hatred anymore. I bent down, kissed the wetness at the corner of his eye, then pressed my lips to his. From now on, I whispered, you have me. He kissed me back like a drowning man grabbing air. So intense it felt like he was trying to fuse me into his bones, like that was the only way to prove he still had somewhere he belonged. That night, we held each other until we were exhausted. Not from desire, from fear. fear of loneliness falling like snow, burying a life so completely you forget you ever had a heart. We held on, like if we let go, the whole world would collapse again. The next morning when I woke up, Alexander was gone. The room was quiet. Only his familiar scent lingered on the pillow, and a stack of papers sat neatly on my nightstand. I sat up, my hands shaking a little as I flipped the first page. A stock transfer agreement, 50% of Ashford Group, every share in Alexander's name, was being transferred to mine. At the bottom, his handwriting was strong, clean, and beautiful like a vow. All I have is yours. Tears spilled instantly, hot like a burn. You idiot. I bit my lip, angry and aching at the same time. Money was never what I wanted. From start to finish, the only thing I ever wanted was him. Just that man who played cold in a wheelchair, while his mind was always spiraling in panic that I'd leave. Just him. Life after that slowly settled into peace. Alexander took full control of Ashford Group, pushed bold reforms, wiped out the remaining factions, and pulled the company out of the storm. He worked like a cold blade, sharp, precise, and because of that, people feared him more every day. And me. I became the most envied woman in Manhattan. A massive fortune. A handsome, rich husband who loved me so openly everyone could see it. People said I must have saved a whole galaxy in my past life. Only I knew the truth. I just met the right person at the right time. And happened to have a little trick. Today is our 1-year anniversary. Alexander booked the most romantic revolving restaurant in the city, where the lights looked like they fell from the stars, and all of Manhattan slowly circled around us like a giant embrace. Under the lights, he dropped to one knee. In his hands was a diamond ring bigger than the one from our first wedding, so bright it almost hurt to look at. Grace. He looked up at me, his eyes strangely soft. I lied to you. From the beginning. Today I want to make it up to you with a real wedding. Will you marry me again? I looked at him, tears rising from pure happiness. Right as I was about to nod, his voice rang out in my head, fast and frantic, worried in a way that was honestly ridiculous. Will she say yes? She's going to say yes. Right? The ring size is right. I measured it last night. I practiced this speech 100 times. Don't mess this up. God, my heart's pounding. I laughed. Even as Chairman Ashford, even with that blizzard cold face in public, inside he was still innocent in the cutest way. I took the ring, slipped it onto my ring finger, then pulled him up. Yes, I said. But I have one condition. Instantly, I heard his entire internal alarm system go off like a siren. What condition? Say it. As long as I can do it, I'll do anything. Does she want the moon or the stars? Whatever it is, I'll buy it. I leaned close to his ear, whispered so only we could hear. At the wedding, I said, you have to tell me what you thought the first time you saw me. Alexander went rigid. He looked at me like he couldn't believe it, eyes wide exactly like the day I exposed his fake disability. In his head, screaming shattered the air. What? Why would she ask that? Could it be? No. No way. I'm imagining things. Seeing that panic, I smiled even wider. I rose onto my toes, kissed him, then I said, light as a touch but sharp as a needle, answering the question that had haunted him for a year. Because I heard it. My eyes curved. I heard you thinking how exhausting it was to pretend to be disabled, but luckily your wife. I tilted my head, whispering, is soft and smells good. Alexander froze. In his head, nothing but exclamation points, one after another, endless. What? She can hear my thoughts? Since when? Oh my God. So that means she knows every stupid thought I've had? I watched his gorgeous face go from shock to horror to total, absolute despair, and I laughed so hard I almost cried. Some love confessions get said out loud, and some don't need words at all. Because I heard every beat of his heart. I heard the tenderness he hid behind the coldness. I heard the love he was terrified of exposing so he could only scream it in silence. I wrapped my arms around him, forehead to forehead. I love you, Alexander. Not because of the ring, not because of the money, but because from the moment I heard you, your heart's been saying one thing. Forever. That you love me.